How many times have you made a typo in your code that introduced a bug that you didn't discover before it was too late? It happens to all of us, me included. That is why we want to make sure that we always have a safety net from tests to make sure such errors get found instantly. But what do we do if there are no tests in the code and we need to refactor it to actually introduce tests? When working with legacy code bases, usually there's no built-in support for testing, so you might easily end up in a situation where you need to change the code to actually introduce tests. But what if you made a typo while you were making the changes needed to add the tests? You could risk that it would never get found and be hidden until the code actually reaches the production systems. But luckily, most modern IDEs have features to help us in this situation. They have built-in refactoring tools that allow us to have the IDE do the changes using a wizard. Since the changes are controlled by a system, there's no danger of us making typos. Let's for example say we have a huge method that we need to refactor. Because part of the method depends on a class that's difficult to instantiate, like a database object, we'll have a hard time creating tests for the method. We can use the extract method feature in most IDEs to break the method into smaller pieces such that we can test them individually. But please resist the temptation to mix automated refactorings with manual edits. It's important to have safe edits separated from manual edits. As soon as you have tests in place, you can start to refactor the code into a better state. To showcase how to use automated refactoring tools, I've used a code kata called the Gilded Rose. It contains quite convoluted method with complex logic that we'll use as an example for how to use automated tools for refactoring. When looking at the code from the Gilded Rose, we see that we have one large method called updateQuality. It contains a for loop that loops items, and the purpose of this method is of course to, as it says, update the quality of the items, but also change the cell date. So it has actually multiple responsibilities, which is not good. So if you scroll through the method, you can see that it contains quite a lot of nested if statements. So we would like to be able to test this method, but since it's so huge, it's going to be quite difficult to reason about that. So we would like to break it up into smaller pieces to be able to test it individually. But the danger of doing that manually is of course that since we don't have a test harness, we have no way of knowing if we introduce errors while we do this refactoring. So we would like to do the refactoring in a way that makes it impossible for us to actually introduce errors. One way to do this would be to use the extract method feature of your IDE, because that makes the refactoring automated and lessens the ability to introduce errors in the process. So to actually do the refactoring, we can start by marking the first part, the if-else statement. This code deals with updating the quality of the item. You can see here that it updates quality with -1, and we can see further down it updates the quality to +1, and the same thing down here, and still working with the quality. So it seems that this part of the code deals just with the updating the quality. So if we invoke the extract method refactoring, we can see that it gives us a dialog where we can type in the method name. So we'll call that updateQuality. So when we do this refactoring, we can see that we have now an updateQuality method, which is down here. We also have a part of the code which deals with updating the cell indate. So we can do the same thing, extract the method. Now we have the last if statement in this method, which deals with updating quality when the sell-in date is less than 0. So if we mark that as well, invoke the refactoring tool, we can call that update quality when sell-in date is negative. So now we have actually managed to extract the method that or three methods, which are much smaller and much easier to actually test. So instead of testing this huge method, we can now focus on testing these individual parts. Since we used the refactoring tool, we are 100% sure that we didn't introduce any change in behavior, because that's governed by the refactoring tool. Right now the methods are set to private. We would need to change those to be public to be able to access them from our test cases. And as soon as we have the tests in place, we can start refactoring these manually instead of relying on test tools to do it. But it's a good start to have the initial setup to make it much easier for us to test.